Subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to get all the latest updates. We continue to be on the ground in Ladakh. You can see the expanse of the mountains right behind me. And this is an extremely important conversation that we're about to have because the Prime Minister's remarks at the all-party meeting created a bit of a political storm. A clarification is now available, and the Prime Minister has clarified that when he was talking about no intrusions by the Chinese or no occupation of our territory, what he actually meant was that the heroism and the sacrifice of our soldiers was able to stem the Chinese transgression. But questions here on the ground still abound. While this addresses the question of what's happening in the Galwan Valley, we do not actually have an official account of what's happening in the Pangong Tso lake area, where reports suggest that the Chinese did move as far as Finger 4. The fingers, of course, refer to the spurs, the natural structures around the lake. And China and India have not necessarily always agreed on their perceptions of the line of actual control. On this special broadcast from Leh today, what we're asking is how much more do we know? Is the government's messaging still confused? And is the elephant in the room the question of the Pangong Tso lake area? On the program today, General Satish Dua is with us, Air Marshal Manmohan Bahadur is with us, Sushant Sareen, well-known strategic affairs analyst, is with us, and we hope to also have General Rameshwar Roy join us in the course of the program. General Dua, I'll start with you, and I'll start with you not just because you know this area, you know what you're talking about, but I'm also told that the military did reach out to senior commanders to give a perspective, to give a kind of on-background briefing about what's happening, so that when you are able to engage with the public, you're able to really tell us in a more informed way what's going on. Now, what's happened is that the remarks at the all-party meeting created such confusion that China leapt into it. And if you see the statements from China today, you have China now laying claim to all of Galwan Valley and quoting the Indian Prime Minister saying, see, even the Prime Minister said China is not inside Indian territory. The clarification has come today, sir, but some would say the damage has been done. We've given a kind of propaganda advantage to the Chinese.
Let me put it in a different perspective, Barkha, if I may. We have often spoken about it over the past few days that between India and China, 22 rounds of talks have taken place, 23 flashpoints called ADP, areas of differing perceptions, have been identified. So it is in these areas that there is a different claim line between the two sides. And then there is an area between the claim lines. And that's where normally the face-offs take place. Some are not so, sometimes it leads to fisticuffs, etc. But Galwan is not amongst the amongst the 23 flashpoints identified. So what does that mean? It means that firstly, we've never had an issue in Galwan earlier. For reasons best known to them, they've come here in strength, and we can talk about that. And we've been talking about the proximity to the road that leads to DSDBO that has been upgraded in the last year and continuing now. But the fact of the matter is, at the LAC, now here there are no differing perceptions. There is a LAC. Galwan is one word, but Galwan Valley is a long valley. Along the Galwan River is coming and joining Shyok, which is the junction is very well in our side of the LAC. The point is, Galwan is not one place. So at some point, the LAC runs, the Galwan River is flowing roughly from east to west. So at one point, the LAC runs across the Galwan Valley. Now, that area is well away from the Shyok River and our road. The point being made here is when they came up to the LAC, when our troops realized that and they stopped them at the LAC, that has happened over a month ago. That is where the face-offs took place. That is where some pushing and shoving took place or whatever else. That is what led amongst Pangong Tso you're talking about, other than Pangong Tso, that has led to different levels of meetings, including the first ever Lieutenant General level meeting. Now, what was decided on 6th of June at that meeting was, let us disengage and then we'll talk about it. So they were trying to disengage on both sides. So obviously the soldiers, the troops on ground have to ensure that they have disengaged. So every day, a progress report is being forwarded to the headquarters, whether they have disengaged or not. What does disengage mean? And disengage means if they pitched up a tent near the LAC or on the LAC, that area where they were stopped, then they must remove that tent. So our troops go back and talk to them every day. If they have not removed the tent, they ask them to do it. Sometimes these
Okay.
talks turn ugly. And on the night of 15, apparently, it turned very ugly. The result is there to see. Our troops were brave enough to fight under the rules. Now we can talk about the CBMs, and that is why the weapons are not being used, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But the
Okay.
fact is that our troops sacrificed their life to stop them at the to make sure that they have
I
disengaged.
got that, sir.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I think
So
the important point that you're making is that in Galwan, at the line of control, when the transgression attempt took place, the Chinese were pushed back because of the heroism of the troops, which is what has come in the clarification by the Prime Minister's office today. But the, the point is that this has come many hours later, sir, the clarification. And we have General Rameshwar Roy also joining us. Welcome, sir, to this special broadcast. I'd just like to bring in Sushant, Sareen, before I come to you, because Sushant has been repeatedly making the point of how in an age of information warfare, we just cannot stumble on our strategic communication. And Sushant, I was seeing what you said on Twitter, and you said this clarification, while being clear, at least on what happened in Galwan Valley, uh, is too late because the Chinese have, made a little sort of pudding out of the kind of confusion and contradictions that have existed in the Indian public domain.
That's true. And you know what the government needs to, number one, realize is that in a tense atmosphere of the sort there is, every statement which comes out, there is going to be a lot of hair splitting over it. Now, clearly, we did not anticipate this, number one. Number two, I think what the government has not understood is that in this day and age, unless you are setting the narrative, you are going to be following or playing catch up to a narrative which somebody else has set up. And that has been a problem. So the government's response is still very 20th century. कि यार शाम को एक press release issue कर देंगे. You know, at 6 o'clock in the evening before the news cycle starts, the papers go to print, a press release will be issued. I'm sorry, this is not the age of a press release. A press release is a Twitter handle now.
Yeah.
And a Twitter handle is, as things are happening, that Twitter handle is giving you information. So I look at Twitter, apart from trolling people like you, I look at Twitter because it's the fastest source of information for me.
Absolutely.
Now, surely the government needs to wake up to this reality and put in place a mechanism so that information can be shared, whatever information they want to share, whatever misperceptions they want to correct, they can do it in double time. So, for example, after the Prime Minister made the speech, within minutes, Barkha, you could see the kind of stuff which was being said and the kind of confusion that was spreading. And frankly, I won't blame the people who were tweeting all that stuff because there was ambiguity in what was being discerned from what the Prime Minister said. Now, again, some amount of ambiguity is quite good, okay, because you keep everybody thinking. But the ambiguity in what happened was going to lead to what subsequently followed. So somebody in the government, in the Prime Minister's office, or in the in the information department should have been alive to it, and within 15-20 minutes the clarification should have come that, listen, you guys are getting it all wrong. That's not the way this is what the Prime Minister was talking about. It was a limited thing on which he was talking about, and that is the way you need to look at it. Number two, we again have a habit of tilting at the windmill. So the Chinese have said that they claim the whole of Galwan Valley. So what? We claim the whole of Aksai Chin. Have we resigned from that claim of ours? We haven't. So the Chinese can claim. The only point where which is of concern is that when they start opening up some new areas, then it is because the LSC is not delineated, no agreement on where exactly the LSC runs. It's in some ways an open line.
Yeah.
So that means that if the Chinese are now going to start taking this position, then frankly, the Indians can start saying, okay, fine, then we think that the LSC in some area where until now we had not staked a claim, we start staking a claim, which means that the whole thing gets blown apart.
Yeah.
And the Chinese need to wake up to that fact that once you start reopening somewhat settled issues, then there is no end to this. And then you are looking at a much worse situation than what exists currently.
Now, I just want to bring in General Roy because General Roy, your tweet attracted a lot of attention. It seemed to be the sentiment of a soldier who was feeling betrayed. And I think there was ambiguity, as General Dua and Sushant Sareen have pointed out. You actually went on Twitter and said, thank God I'm retired and thank God my son is not in the army, that we have to see this day. Now, can you share what was that thing that you felt that made you say that on Twitter? And do you feel anything differently today after the clarification?
Barkha, the point is, I in fact have a colleague, Satish Dua. We've served together, so he'll know it that I generally don't get emotional about professional issues. Now, yesterday when I heard the Prime Minister, he gave the clarification, or he said that firstly, technically he was correct. Factual details, he was correct. That there was no bunkers, no posts that the enemy had taken from us. That enemy has not come into our territory. This was a very, very dicey kind of a statement to be made. When we know that in Eastern Ladakh, there are two LACs. One is our perceived line of LAC, which goes as much to the east, and the other one is Chinese perceived line of LAC, which comes as much to the west. My frustration has been that during patrolling tasking, we have been patrolled, or we have been tasked to send our patrols to our perceived line of LAC to stake our claims up to that point, whereas Chinese have been coming to their perceived line of LAC to stake their claim. And whenever we do so, we leave some kind of telltale signs to say that, look, we had come. Now, I will not be referring to purely Galwan sector or anything, because his statement was not to a particular sector. His statement was to whatever is happening in the Eastern Ladakh, and he was giving clarification on that after all party meeting. My point of frustration was very strategic in nature. I'm not worried about, few inches here and there and all that. No, the basic issue is, if you say that Chinese haven't come on your territory, it means you are giving them free run up to whichever point they have come up till now, be it Galwan sector or be it the finger area in Pangong Tso. Yeah. The implication of that is that line of actual control is a very dicey word. Today, the line of actual control is up to which point they have come. And knowing their strategy of creeping forward, after some time, we'll find this claim has been pushed to one more ridgeline. And after some time, one more ridgeline. We are aware of this. Chinese have worked on two things very seriously. One is they focus on a nation. They try to find out the weakness in system that the nation has, and they try to exploit that. That is exactly what they have tried to do. And the second part of theirs is that right from 1950, they have maintained that they have no borders with India. What does it mean? So therefore, as a soldier, my frustration has always been this pulling, pushing that goes on. It's not the way of a soldier. The kind of things that went on with the kind of Stone Age weapons that duel which took place, it is not a soldierly fashion. With all that confusion comes one more to say that LAC status is being redefined, or it is being scrapped, or it has been validated. This was my biggest frustration when will the political leadership be able to tell us clearly as to what exactly are my boundaries. I've served on both the sectors. I've served in the Batalic and Ladakh sector. I've served in the Northeast. In fact, 3 tenures in the Northeast. Same confusion prevails there also. We go up to a point, nobody is clear. Then mainly, the people of the country are not aware as to these lines that we keep talking about are not marked by any kind of a identification.
Sure.
These are perceived as one issue, but then they are marked with kind of contours and features. There little confusion on the part of a soldier can take place. So that is my frustration as to why should we not be clear when we knew from beginning of the May, in fact from end of April, that they have come with full preparation. They have come with the complete paraphernalia, which goes with the indication that they are here to stay on long-term basis. They are not going to go away too soon. If that be the case, then our response, unfortunately, has not been commiserating that, And that has again been my frustration as to why. Okay, fine. If we say we could not take, in fact, I tweeted that we cannot take any kinetic action because those indications were coming to me. If we can't take that, okay, fine. At least we can go in for a face-off. At least we can stop up to the line up to which they have come and show the result to say, look, this and no more. After all, Siachen has been, Aksai Chin has been existing for a very long time.
Yeah.
And 38,000 square kilometers of area, they've been having it. And we have accepted it. But they want to creep in more now. So stop them here. You can't just say that, no, they haven't come to our territory. See, that's the main point. That's what
Okay.
I'll say.
Okay, let me just bring in Marshal Bahadur and then we can do another round of responses. I think a very passionate response from General Roy and Sushant making the critical point about miscommunication, kind of Stone Age communication almost for the world we live in. Marshal Bahadur, how do you see what's happening?
May I go back to my tweet? Basically, we are talking Galwan, and I was shocked when I saw that tweet of the spokesperson of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs saying that the whole of Galwan is, or the Galwan Valley is part of Chinese perception of the LAC. That is actually all humbug, plain and simple. We used to fly, I was there in that area in 1978, and we used to fly from Darbuk to DBO, from takeoff from Darbuk, northwesterly direction, hop across to Shiok, and then follow the river, along the river, cross Chanchango, which goes towards Shok Shalu, and go straight. And then came that Galwan confluence. Our maps were very clear. The LAC was way to the east of the confluence of Shok and Galwan. We knew that the LAC is existing somewhere a few kilometers further to the east, but we had no reason to go there because we were going to DBO and we would follow the Shok River.
Yeah.
Never ever have we seen any activity, nor were we briefed by the intelligence people to avoid that confluence. So that was told to me by my seniors when I joined the unit in 78. I was there for 4 years, and when I left, I briefed those who came in later to say that this particular valley goes towards the LAC, and beyond a certain point, which was marked on the map, the LAC comes in.
Right.
Never a doubt. So right now, their aim of getting Galwan to be shown as their part of their LAC, to my understanding, is just to overlook that road which is going to DBO, because that has changed communications. Earlier, back again in 78, it used to be the mule convoys of the army that used to go. They used to take weeks to go from Darbuk to DBO. Okay, so this road has changed the paradigm of how we look after subsector north, and that is what limited to that area in the tactical sense is why they want to be on the heights, similar to Kargil, what happened in Kargil.
So let me bring in Sushant here, and then I want General Dua and all of you to respond. Sushant, one of the things you've said is things, at least finally, after a lot of confusions, seem clear about Galwan. I think we have some sense of what the situation in Galwan is. The elephant in the room is Pangong Tso Lake, right? And even if there are differing perceptions between India and China, the military's annotated maps are very clear. India patrols till finger 8. We patrol till finger 8. I think that's something that can't be denied. Now we have ambiguity over where exactly the Chinese are. There are reports that suggest that there are Chinese structures, right up to finger 4. And nobody's again telling us what's going on.
Okay, yeah. So that is a problem. And in fact, if you remove the Galwan from the whole equation, then on some of the other two, in fact, both the hot springs area as well as the Pangong Tso, there is evidence to suggest, and I'm talking about satellite evidence, not source-based evidence. There is evidence to suggest that, yes, they have started building up some structures, whether it's temporary or permanent, in the Pangong Tso area. Also, they have moved in large forces in the hot springs area. Whether they have actually transgressed the line of actual control is difficult to say as of now, but from the picture, it seems they haven't exactly transgressed the LAC. But, Barkha, Pangong Tso in some ways probably is not as strategic as this whole Galwan push which they had made. And if, as Air Marshal Bahadur is saying that he has the experience of that territory, the generals have an experience of that territory. I haven't been that far, but to me it suggests that if the whole idea is that transport to DBO, then the real threat is to DBO right now. Eventually, the Chinese are going to block you here, and are they then going to make a push for DBO? And what does that mean? So at a strategic level, that is what concerns me. On the tactical level, I believe, and again, these are accounts of people who have served in the area, that even in the past, the Chinese have sometimes come and set up some tents in the Pangong Tso area, but then when the winter comes, they pull them out and they push back because it's very difficult to stay in that area. I don't know whether something similar will follow this time, or this time they are here to stay for good. I don't know. And then what are the options? That I believe the generals and the politicians have to decide how far you want to go. Do you want to draw a line in the sand here and now, regardless of the consequences? Or is there some other way you are going to approach this issue? But for me, the real concern right now seems to be DBO, because once you let them get away with what they are doing right now, then DBO is under threat, because then the whole strategic thing is about stopping you or taking over that DBO thing, because now you're questioning the whole LAC, which is the point I was making earlier.
And that's the whole point, General Dua, that are we in danger of altering the contours of the LAC, which is neither delineated nor demarcated? And therefore, that is a problem in itself. And, I was talking to a lot of the local Ladakhis here, and one of them said rhetorically that if no strong action is taken now, one day the Chinese will be sitting in Leh. This was just conveying sentiment. It was a rhetorical comment, but he felt it. The people here feel that the locals keep saying, in fact, the Hindi phrase that the man used was, "वो हर साल आके हमारे थोड़े किलोमीटर काटते हैं." That is what they said, right? So, General Dua, respond to what Sushant and General Roy have raised about us not drawing a line in the sand, that we've got to draw a line in the sand. Otherwise, this LAC, which is not delineated, the contours of it may shift. And that's clearly what the Chinese are playing for.
Let me put it this way, Barkha. We have an LAC, and at several places, there is more than one LAC. I mean, there are different claim lines. That is, there are two versions of LAC, as I spoke earlier. At Galwan, as we know it today, we call it Galwan, there are no two different perceptions, because that is not one of the 23 identified areas. At Pangong Tso, there are two claim lines. There's between finger 4 and finger 8, and it appears there is 7 to 8 kilometers of gap in between. There, in earlier years also, we have seen this kind of shoving and pushing, and they coming up to a point, we going up to a point. Like Sushant said, this time there is photographic satellite imagery evidence, and I don't think anyone is denying that, because otherwise, what are the talks taking place for?
Exactly.
The talks are taking place to disengage at the 3 points. So no one is denying that. What is not coming out from the army openly and clearly? And Sushant, while he's right about giving out the information updates regularly, etc., I go with him, and I myself tweeted a couple of times on that. But giving the exact position by the army, that exact where they are, what exactly has been constructed, so that is not coming. And to my mind, while an operation is in progress, because this is an operation, while an operation is in progress, I think it is prudent to let that be. As to your the larger point that you made, that Sushant has also said, she are not drawing a line, and so they are grabbing they are grabbing some territory, like the locals told you. I don't think that is correct, because when it comes to a line, we have drawn our red lines, and you think we will let the Chinese come in further beyond a point, then we will not take a military action, even if it amounts to skirmish. If it amounts to a skirmish, then we have to be prepared for its escalation, and that is why Air Force has been deployed. So we are, and please let us understand, over the years, this pushing and shoving and this fisticuffs is getting a little more belligerent every time, and it has now resulted in deaths, even if shots have not been fired.
Yeah.
So do you think that army is not prepared for this contingency? We know that one day it will go out of control. So my point is, we have contingencies in place, and at what level, when the diplomatic and military talks will fail, military is absolutely ready. When I say military, I include the Air Force.
Yeah, but I want,
and military is ready to defend it if required by action.
But I want to come to General Roy, but I know Sushant wants to respond briefly because I'm pretty sure that Sushant was not talking about the delay in communication from the army. I don't think he was talking about operational details at all. I think he's talking about political communication. Sushant, please briefly go ahead and then I'll get General Roy.
Very briefly, Barkha, actually, I'm talking about both political as well as military communication.
Okay.
Look, my template is the Kargil War. You remember it better than anybody else. In the initial days, when we had Colonel Bikram Singh, later General Bikram Singh, and we had the late, much lamented Raminder Singh Jassal holding forth, giving out information. Look, the journalists were very responsible. They were reporting what was being fed to them. And there was an amount of clarity. Okay, that was a different era. That I'm talking about 20 years back. But I think what is important is that because there are these dribbles of information coming, there has to be somebody who says and sift fact from fiction. It's certainly not my case that you give the deployments or what the action plans are, what the battle plans are. Certainly not. But at least sift the fact from the fiction and then leave it to the journalists. Many of them, most of them who are on the defense beat are responsible people. They are not going to be spreading rumors. They're not going to be indulging in all sorts of stupid activity. So trust them. And if you don't trust some of them, don't talk to them, but talk to the others. So I think some system of information sharing is a force multiplier, not something which compromises operations.
All right, General, I couldn't agree with you more. General Roy and Marshal Bahadur, let's bring you in. General Roy, did you feel better after you read the Prime Minister Office's clarification, or did it still not address your frustration, to use your own word, as a soldier who served in these areas?
No, I don't think it really addressed that. I'm not getting biased about anything. I have great regard for Prime Minister, like everybody should have. You see, Barkha, the problem is we are a very news-hungry nation. Like Sushant was saying, whatever news gets disseminated, it must be disseminated in a manner that it is close-ended. It should not leave too many questions. In our case, it leaves too many questions, be it the army, be it the civil. Basic issue here is that I'm not looking at Chinese from the technical point of view, because these are very, very smart people, very smart enemy. And the way they have gone about preemptive in South China Sea or other places, they have gone in for here also. First issue is that they have made it very clear that here they are in collusion with Pakistan. And when you look at long term, it is not simply the question of DBO. DBO is a small tactical objective. The strategy is to come behind or make Siachen vulnerable. They got the CPAC going from DBO as the crow flies. Manmohan Bahadur will tell us that it's just about 8 to 10 kilometers. We've been patrolling up to Karakoram. Beyond that is Kunjera Pass. So therefore subsector north is not the only issue. They got the CPAC here, they got the Siachen here, they got their own collision with the Pakistan here, and therefore they are just inching towards this. And so long as they don't change the status of the LAC, LAC is a line of actual control. This actual control might, even when now they are there, whether they stay there or not, but they will make it very clear that these are the points we are marking on the ground. These are the bunkers we are making on the ground. This is the line we are drawing from Galwan to Pangong Tso to them come down on you like ton of bricks. And that's exactly what they will do. And this is exactly how they do. Therefore, my point is, embarrassment or the degree of difficulty is to the field commanders over there, the corps commander, the army commander. I mean, how much reserves to keep where for what contingencies? How many people to keep at what height? Because see, these are very difficult places. I have had 3 altitude tenures, 14,000 feet, 12,000 feet, 16,000 feet, 600 is DBO. Very difficult heights. Living there is a torturous issue. And if these issues are not clarified in this manner, how does the army prepare itself for logistics, for sustenance in those places, for reaction in those places, and looking at and protecting the long-term strategic interest of this country? They got a Depsang playing there. They have come to the south of it. If they stay in Galwan where they are going to be, they are just south of Depsang Plain. Depsang Plain they've been eyeing up for it for a long time. Patrolling has been going on from our side, their side. But if they see it here, they're south of it.
And I think the point you're making
let us
is
look
this.
at it from that point of view, that perspective, and we need to take action as per that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Air Marshal Bahadur, if I'd like to bring you in now, almost out of time. So just from you haven't got a chance to make your point. Go ahead, please, sir.
I think the bigger picture is one of national morale. It is important that our statements and happenings on the front, you can't hide those things happen now because of social media and the information flow that happens. So while the people in power cannot give out everything and should not give out everything, there has to be a right balance. We almost knew for 24 hours, if not more, that some of our soldiers were in Chinese custody.
Custody.
That the figure was not 3, but much higher. It was all over social media. Now, whom do we believe? So that's the point. It's a question of national morale. After yesterday's statement, as you said, there was the tweet of General Roy. I also tweeted, "All is well, good night."
Yes,
You
I
know,
saw
there
that.
was another person who said, "Nobody killed Rebecca." You know, or the famous case, "Nobody killed Rebecca." That thing was tweeted and was retweeted. So the point at issue is somebody has to think deep. It's a question of national morale. Our soldiers are there, our army is there, the air force is there. When it's called upon, it'll strike. But messaging is something that we really have to improve in real time to keep the spirit of the nation behind what is happening in the borders.
I think that is the perfect note to close this conversation on. I think we all know that we are in for a long haul. There are going to be many developments that take place in the next few weeks along this area where I'm sitting right now. Access, by the way, has been absolutely closed. Tomorrow is Sunday, and the city of Leh is also shutting down for traffic. So obviously the military is doing what it needs to, what it wants to, what it thinks is appropriate on the ground. That is not the information we need or we seek. I think what we need or we seek is the larger narrative of where we stand as a country, where we stand politically, and that messaging is critical to holding a nation together in a time of crisis. I thank all of you, General Roy, General Dua, Air Marshal, and Sushant, as always. A pleasure having you on this special broadcast from Leh. I learned a lot, and I hope our viewers did too. Thank you so much.